do it to the cloud.
Recording. You're good.
Okay, so Jen, I'm going to make you the host. Wait, let me admit, I'm going to admit everyone. And then I'm going to say welcome. So I have a minute or two of welcome. Okay, Jen?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
At what point, Ellen, do you want me to bring my screen up? Just after you've welcomed everyone?
Sure.
I think you should do it now.
I can. I'm not the host yet.
Okay. So I don't, okay.
She is the host now.
Okay, so I'm going to welcome everyone. I don't know who's here and who's not here yet. Hi, Isabel.
Hello.
It was just a bell, and then was Isabel. It's fun.
That was cute. So I'm Ellen Schwartz. I am the coordinator of the Bergen County chapter of CHAD, and welcome to everyone. I can't see a single soul, and who you can see are our two speakers for tonight, Marybeth Sullivan Rose and Jennifer
Giles.
Yeah, I just lost Giles. Both of whom, thank you, are executive functioning coaches, ADHD coaches, and we're so happy to welcome them. They're going to be talking tonight about ADHD in adults and overwhelm, how to recognize, manage, and overcome it. Before they start, I just want to welcome you all to Bergen County's chapter of CHAD. And for those of you who don't know, CHAD is a national organization that provides support and information for those living with ADHD, including parents, spouses, and adults. What we are going to be doing, and we're trying to do, is alternate each month. 1 month have a speaker addressing issues related to adults, which is why we have Jen and Marybeth tonight. And on the alternating months, issues addressing children. And our speaker next month is going to be Matthew Zuck. That's on November 2nd. He's going to talk about positive parent-child relationships and building reliance, self-reliance, and self-worth in kids with ADHD. So I think that's all I have to say for today. Please check out our website. Just go to Bergen County, CHAD at Bergen County. All our upcoming speakers and support groups are listed there, as well as recordings from previous virtual meetings. Okay, I'm done. Jen.
Thank you, Ellen, and thanks to CHAD for having us. I speak on behalf of both Marybeth and myself that this is an honor to be here, and I think it's a very timely topic as we are in unprecedented times and approaching the holidays. So let's get into it. Overwhelm. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so, what is overwhelm? What does it look like in our bodies? How do we recognize it? And by all means, what in the world do we do with it? How do we overcome it? Okay, overwhelm is an emotional reaction to being swamped, stressed, or depressed. To the extent that we feel, a system's shut down of sorts, right? Those of us with ADHD are more prone to overwhelm for a number of reasons. One is we already have a lot of sensory input, a lot of noise in our brains, a lot of
you might recognize some of this.
noise.
Luca,
No.
You might identify with some of this stuff that other people are sharing.
Somebody is talking. I can't hear the speaker.
We have to remind everybody to please mute your computer. Otherwise, we can hear you and we can't hear the speaker. So if everyone could please press mute right now, that would be great. Thank you.
I couldn't have planned that better, right? Because I was just talking about that mental noise. I think that was a beautiful illustration, and those of us with ADHD already have that disorganization, some of that mental noise, so we tend to get more thrown off balance with that interruption, right? So that was an excellent example of it, and I thank you for it. Okay, so that tends to throw us into overwhelm more easily, but also those of us with ADHD, and my cursor isn't working, here we go. we're thrown more into ADHD more easily because we struggle with executive functions. Now, I'm thinking most of the people in this crowd know what executive functions are. These are the skills that we use to get anything done. They're found in the, right in the part of our brain right behind our forehead called the prefrontal cortex. And those of us with ADHD struggle with temporal discounting or time management. And this is that inability to figure out how long things take us to do and to get it done within a right period of time. We struggle with impulsivity. That means that we're going to say yes when we should be saying no. We struggle with prioritization. Barbara Luther with ADDCA just recently told me that those of us with ADHD tend to have brains with a flat topography. We don't see things important come up, and we don't see things that can go below the topography. So it all seems to come at us with the same level of importance. We can't draw out what needs to be done first. We're obviously disorganized, both externally and internally. We struggle with task initiation and completion. All of these things lead to overwhelm. And, I love this picture of this one because she's teetering on a unicycle, which is like most of us with ADHD, we tend to be on that edge of some catastrophic event in our brains to where we hit that tipping point. And many of us are diagnosed with ADHD as a result of that tipping point or that overwhelm where we wind up at the doctor wondering what's wrong with us. And then I think a very important executive function, and the one that runs through all of the executive functions, is the last one, emotional regulation. Russell Barkley, the guru of ADHD, has said, ADHD is not a deficit of attention. It is a deficit of emotional regulation. Therefore, those of us with ADHD have a high comorbidity with anxiety, clinical anxiety. We tend to have a negative bias. We tend to think about the worst case scenarios. They are stickier in our brains than a positive point of view. We tend to live in fear of being in over our heads to the point that we're crippled. You've heard of the imposter syndrome. We fear criticism and failure and the unknown to the extent of panic at times. And certainly, we feel immobile in the event of anxiety and panic. And then, of course, there's depression. Unresolved anxiety is going to lead to impression or that learned helplessness, a term coined by Martin Siegelman. I highly recommend you look into this. It's a hopelessness that is immobilizing. We tend to feel like we're in a rut, we're spinning our wheels, we're unable to move forward. Those of us with ADHD have struggled with frequent criticism since we were young. And it causes us to avoid challenges in the future, immobilizing us. We have this language that we can't do it, that it's no use, that it will never work, why bother, right? So as a coach, I work with my clients in these river versus rut stories. A rut story is one where our stories reflect distorted thoughts and problematic core beliefs. It's that self-talk where we see the problem, but we can't see the solution. We're just stuck in a rut, unable to move forward, versus river thinking. A river constantly moves forward, and river thinking stories reflect a commitment to learning, growing, and persevering, getting out of that rut and moving forward in life like a river continues to move forward. In river thinking, you're gaining traction. You're moving out of overwhelm. So Marybeth is going to talk to you about how to get some hacks to getting out of that rut thinking and into river thinking. But before I turn it over to Marybeth, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the brain so that you can recognize it and see what's happening and hopefully visualize how to get out of it. So I love to use this illustration by Dan Siegel about the brain. Your arm represents the spinal cord, your knuckles represent that prefrontal cortex, and then if you flip your lid, so to speak, you have the midbrain here. So this is all about, regulating your emotions. You've got your reptilian brain back here that's in charge of everything you don't have to think about, breathing and respirations and heart rate. Your prefrontal cortex is where all your executive functions take place. Is the thinking brain. When you're in the prefrontal cortex, you are centered, you're learning, you're communicating, you're problem solving. When you're in the midbrain, this part of our brain is the emotional part of our brain that is well developed and used for survival. So this is the part of our brain that we use for, let's say, moving out of the way of a moving car. And my thumb here represents the amygdala. So we can use this part of our brain, and we need this part of our brain for survival, but we don't want to live here, right? We want most of our time to be spent in that prefrontal cortex where we're solving problems and learning and growing. But in overwhelm, we're stuck here in this emotional part of the brain. And we want to figure out a way to regain control by getting back into that prefrontal cortex. How do we do that? Marybeth is going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But I want to go back to the amygdala really quickly. Obviously, there's more, it's more complex than this, but just for the sake of simplicity, that amygdala here, represented by my thumb, is the bully in the brain. It produces fear and other negative emotions. To repeat, this is a good thing in that it teaches us how to avoid or manage risk in the short term. But short term is the operative word here. We don't want to live in the amygdala. Living in the amygdala or cohabitating there is overwhelm, right? And I love this picture. Marybeth gave me this picture. It has a hand, and it almost makes me think of how that hand is grabbing your thoughts and holding them in your amygdala, right? You want your thoughts, you want your problem, you want to spend energy in the prefrontal cortex, but here this hand is holding your thoughts in the amygdala, and that is the picture of overwhelm that I think is helpful to help us understand it better. So how do we loosen that grip and get our thoughts out of the amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex where we can at least have a chance of solving them? Well, that's done in our chemistry, with a little neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is the motivation molecule. It is what we spill into our bloodstream, our brain, and our brains when we are motivated to do something because we have an interest in it, we desire it. It's out of our reach, but it's something we hope to get a hold of, right? It's the gasoline behind our executive functions, that desire to achieve something. But there's a problem. Those of us with ADHD are low on dopamine, and certainly those of us in overwhelm are low in dopamine. We're stuck in that rut, right? So again, we spill dopamine into our bloodstreams when we have an interest or we anticipate something good as a result of getting that something. Or actually, dopamine is the love molecule. You know, when we see somebody from across the room that we're interested in, we spill dopamine into our bloodstreams. That gives us the energy and the executive function skills to walk over and engage that person. So dopamine, the pro of dopamine is this: you can use the dopamine reward system to accomplish momentum or traction to get out of that rut of overwhelm. So just this morning, my son was overwhelmed at the thought of doing the dishes. The kitchen was quite a mess, and he had to unload the dishwasher and then load it. And I could tell he was getting an overwhelm. So when he was complaining about not doing the dishes, I said, well, that's too bad, because if you were to just unload the dishwasher, I would then be willing to load it for you. Well, immediately he was able to jump in and unload the dishwasher with a lot of enthusiasm and skill. I mean, dishes were being put away like crazy because I had given him that hope of his not having to load it afterwards. I used the dopamine reward system to get him to accomplish that task, right? Dopamine rewards you when you obey it, but it makes you suffer when you don't. You see, when you're in overwhelm with low dopamine, you're just spinning your wheels. And I think it's important to say, too, that neuroscientists use dopamine in getting you addicted to video games, gambling, casinos, and social media. So I think that's a topic for another webinar, but I think it's interesting that that dopamine reward system is that powerful. Okay, so dopamine is the help you need to get out of a rut. It is short term, and it always needs more. So after you get what you want, you need to continue to spill dopamine into your system to continue that energy towards getting things done. And this is something that Marybeth is going to talk to you about in just a few minutes. And I think the last thing I want to mention here is body bandwidth. Our physical well-being is critical to our emotional well-being. So what do you need physically to resist overwhelm and to get out of overwhelm? What do you need to increase your body bandwidth. So in summary of overwhelm, and I'll turn it over to Marybeth, is this. Overwhelm is a bombardment of stimulus and emotions to the point of shutdown. You feel like you're just spinning your wheels. Those of us with ADHD have high sensitivity, so we're more likely to fall into it. We have lagging executive function skills. Once we're in overwhelm, we struggle to get out. We have low dopamine. How do we get dopamine into our systems to get out of overwhelm? This is why we find ourselves in overwhelm. Those in overwhelm have low body bandwidth. The solution that I'm going to turn over to Marybeth now is increasing that emotional regulation through awareness, supporting those executive functions, increasing dopamine and increasing body bandwidth. All right, with that said.
I just want to thank you, Jen. Somebody wrote to me to say they couldn't get into the meeting, and since you are the host right now,
I would be happy to let that person in. Ooh, there are lots of more people in there. Okay, let me escape here. For some reason, my computer's not wanting to escape. Let's see why that is.
Oh, great picture.
That is Marybeth, and is everyone there?
So,
can you hear me? Good. Okay, so now I'm going to get, I was panicking that I just dropped you by accident. Okay, how do I let people in here? Here we go. Participants, admit. Okay. Oh, goodness, lots of people trying to get in here. Okay. Now, with that said, I'm going to turn this over.
Could you just ask them all to mute, or can you mute them all as the host?
Let me turn it up to Marybeth and ask people to mute so that.
Okay.
Okay, Marybeth.
Okay.
You've got it.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay.
Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, wait. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to go up a bit to number 1. Okay. All right, here we go. All right. Do we have everybody in and you can hear me and all that? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you going to be recording this meeting?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think we are. I think we are recording it. Yes. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Marybeth. Thank you, Jennifer, for all the information leading us up to this. I wanted to continue and build on what Jennifer has already talked about and continue with our overwhelm. Overwhelm, let's be clear about this. It happens to everybody. It's not just us with ADHD. In today's crazy world, especially with what we're going through with this pandemic and everything else, it just seems to happen more often, and especially for us, for those of us with ADHD, because as Jennifer just explained to you, we are uniquely wired to be more susceptible to what I call this little gem, and it can really put us in a bind. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. My screen is not advancing. Hold on.
Can
you hear?
Just press your keypad. The touch.
Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so there's some things that we know for sure about overwhelm. It's a part of life. We are more susceptible. But the other thing is that we have to understand that there's a couple of different things that we can look at. We need to be aware of things, aware of what's going on with our overwhelm, aware that we all have patterns in relation to the overwhelm. And then being aware and recognizing your own personal overwhelm is that first step of what we call awareness. There are also tools and strategies to manage this monster and change that behavior. And that's what we go into with a step 2 of action, which we'll talk about as well. And then the other part of that is sustaining the behavior change is the key to the long-term success. Again, whenever you're on any journey, like if you look at a pilot that leaves from LaGuardia and goes to LA, there's a flight plan, and a very definite flight plan that's put in place. Now, during that journey, that pilot is going to be off kilter in many, many different times, but they get to the end result all the time. And it's just that we have to be a little bit more careful with ourselves, gentle with ourselves, to say we don't have to be perfect. But if we set an intention to go from A to B, that eventually we will get there. So getting knocked down in life, being overwhelmed is a given, but getting up and moving forward is the choice. Jennifer talked about those executive functions. Again, that's that part of your brain that helps you regulate your behavior. And regulating your behavior is the key to managing the overwhelm. So as Jennifer talked about, when you are in this amygdala overrun, it's very difficult for the brain to multitask and get out of that kind of environment and then access all these executive functions that we talk about: activation, focus, effort, emotion, memory, action. All those planning kinds of processes, really, we can't access that if that amygdala is in overdrive. So each of us has our own unique combinations of traits. So what does your overwhelm look like? And I like this. It's kind of like an iceberg. So you know you're stressed, you know you're overwhelmed, but what are the behaviors that are leading you to overwhelm, and are they working for you or against you? And this was really relevant to me in the last couple of weeks. We've been topsy-turvy in our house because we actually sold our house without even having it on the market. We're going to have to move in January, which is about a year ahead of time for our family. So I recognized when I was doing this, doing a lot of research and writing this presentation, that I myself was in overwhelm. And I took a look at the behaviors that were getting me there. I went to this first step, which is called awareness. I like this 3-part process. I think it kind of wraps it up neatly in a little box for us to really understand it. The first part is awareness. The second part is action. Take action based on your, what you know, what you're aware of. And then the third part of that is maintaining and making sure that you follow through with what you want to do. So this is kind of a cute little chart to say, there's going to be a time where you're unaware of a need for change, like I was when I was kind of all over the place. And then I was aware that I was in overwhelm and that I needed to make some changes, but I wasn't quite ready yet. And then you get into being ready and preparing, understanding a little bit more, and then you start to actively change the behavior. And then the maintenance part is maintaining that change. This step 1, awareness, this is the education piece, and this is what we're Jennifer was talking about, the amygdala and all that kind of thing, that we have to be aware of what our brain is doing. Without that self-awareness, we're going to struggle to manage ourselves, and this overwhelm is going to take over. We struggle to understand other people. And we also develop, without the self-awareness, it's hard to do the healthy relationships. This metacognition, this is a term that we use with executive function. And I love the word. It's just kind of a fun word to roll off your tongue. But basically what it means is taking that 10,000-foot view and looking at your own behavior and really understanding it. It's the awareness and knowledge of one's mental processes such that you can monitor it, regulate it, and direct it towards a desired goal. There's 2 critical aspects of this metacognition. There's the awareness part. Do you have knowledge of your, the processes and strategies? Are you aware of how you're thinking? Are you thinking about your thinking? And then that will also, there's another part of it that comes in, is the regulation. Okay, now that you're aware, are you able to manage your thinking? Like Jennifer was talking about, the story you're telling yourself. As coaches, as ADHD coaches, this part is really critical for us. This is kind of a foundation, because these are the aspects, the metacognition thing. This is what is going to lead us to all kinds of questions that we're going to ask our clients, probing questions, really kind of a deep dive into why you're thinking the way you're thinking. And this is where you build that metacognition muscle. I love this little cartoon. I use this with the kids too. I'm thinking, I'm noticing, I'm wondering, I'm seeing, really probing somebody and challenging them to take a real clear look at how they're behaving. And again, with the coaching, when you sit and have sessions with a coach that is specifically trained in how to recognize the ADHD thinking, the ADHD traits, the executive function challenges that we may have, you're going to get questions about what are you thinking? What are you feeling? That age-old question, what story are you telling yourself? And what thoughts and feelings am I having? What are they causing me to do? Are these thoughts and feelings causing me to be overwhelmed? Are these behavior patterns causing me to be overwhelmed? And then as a result of that knowledge, more questions. What choices do I need to make? What are you willing to do? What action do I have to do? And then this is going to put that kind of, I guess, support into the executive function and start you on your way to problem solving. The other part of this that I think is really important is not only is what overwhelm is doing, but what you're losing as a result of overwhelm. And that is really huge, because when you're in this amygdala overdrive and this overwhelm, you really don't have access to that executive function part of your brain that will allow you to be that creative person that you are, that will give you the opportunity to do, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the self-actualization and really reaching your potential, the learning part of it, being productive. So when you're in that overwhelm, like this guy on the left, that's all crazy, like we were talking about, all that input, to go to the right where you're more organized, your thinking process a little bit clearer. Okay, so all that is great, but how do we get from here to there? And this is where we get into that second step, that step 2, the action. This I love because it reminds me of when my kids were learning to write in elementary school, and the elementary school teacher would always say, don't worry about your punctuation, don't worry about your grammar, don't worry about anything like that, just get your thoughts down on paper. And I actually did this a couple of weeks ago when I recognized, my awareness was there. It was like, oh boy, Marybeth, you are really in overwhelm with all this, and you need to sit down and write stuff out. And I did, and the paper was a mess, but it got my brain in kind of the right mode to start stimulating the awareness. So write down without judgment. Again, this is recognizing what your overwhelm looks like, what your personal overwhelm patterns are. What are the behaviors and feelings you're noticing, what's overwhelming you? And then that mindful writing will actually stimulate ongoing awareness. There's actually a process of, in the brain when you write things down that really helps you with that. So the common behaviors of the overwhelmed, as Jennifer was talking about, the avoidance and the withdrawal. We used to, with my college student that has ADHD, we used to call this going underground. The irritability, you're irritable with people. Changes in sleeping habits. So you're sleeping too much, or you're sleeping too little. Your changes in eating habits, the moodiness, being tired even though you have enough sleep. The motivation, that's a huge thing. That's a dopamine process that we were talking about. Negative outlook, no matter what solution anybody gives you, you know, you're still kind of negative about things. Trouble focusing, procrastination. And again, these are all those executive behaviors that are challenged, executive function. I love this graphic because so many people that are neurotypical say, why can't you just get started? Just, you know, start. And you see this little neurotypical guy on the left who, you know, has walked up the stairs and he's all, you know, self-righteous. You just need to stop procrastinating. You're just lazy, just do it. And the person with ADHD is saying, I just can't get there. All these thoughts are there at once. So what we always say is choose one small chunk to start. Now, how do you start? Because our dopamine is low, our motivation molecule is low. And Jennifer was talking about with dopamine, that's the interest, the anticipation, desire, all those things are what revs us up. But sometimes we need a dopamine hack. How do we get there? You know, how do we change up our routines so we're interested? How do we do the small chunks so we can begin our task? All these different kinds of things are kind of dopamine hacks. Changing up a routine, we used to say, go to Starbucks. Or, you know, take your, you know, pack up your bag and go to Starbucks or go to the library, be with other people. We can't really do that anymore. But that is, I heard a crazy story the other day about this woman was having trouble with her dopamine and task initiation. She actually poured herself a big latte. She was totally dressed and working, but she just couldn't get there. She actually crawled into bed with her computer and her coffee and just changed up her routine entirely and was able to get a big project done. I thought that was kind of funny. But the other thing, when we used to go to Starbucks or whatever, even with your family, the body doubling is a huge thing. Just being with somebody, you don't talk or anything, you just both get your work done together. There's an app or a site called FocusMate. That is specifically for this purpose. It's for body doubling. But gratitude journaling, introducing novelty in some way, the sleep, exercise, and eating, I'm going to get into that. Those are really big deals. Meditation, success journals to keep you positive, checking things off that are done on a to-do list. That is a dopamine hit right away. That feels really good to people. I mean, how many times have you had a to-do list and you didn't have a certain task on it that you did, and you ran in and wrote that down on your list anyway and checked it off because it just feels so good. So these are just some of the hacks that we can do to spur that dopamine and get us motivated. Then we come to tools and strategies. And this is my big foundation with any client that I work with. And I stress it all the time. I say, see your way to a solid foundation. Just like anything else, just like building a house or, you know, doing any kind of project, you need a foundation. And I think that that foundation, that sleeping, eating, and exercise are just paramount. Because if you don't have the right habits with that, then being able to increase that dopamine and increase that motivation is going to be waning. Ned Hallowell, another ADHD guru, and John Rady, who's a big ADHD guru, they just did, Ned just did a podcast on his distraction podcast about exercise, and he had John Rady there as a guest. And Rady wrote the book Spark, which talks about exercise and what it does to the brain and what it releases and how good it is for you. So that's, if you want a reference to that kind of stuff, the exercise is specifically talked about in there, and it's really, really interesting. The tools and strategies, how do we really do this? There's a couple of goals here. We already talked about creating dopamine. That's huge. We need that motivator to get us started. The other thing that we struggle with, and Jennifer touched on this with the time, you know, the time challenges with us. If you can take that just kind of, you know, nebulous concept of time and make it more visible, it really helps. So making time more visible and creating the dopamine are big strategies. The tools to do that are planners. And I know that we all use our phones, and phones are great. But I think for ADHD people, these paper planners are, and I'm going to show you the way that I use mine, and I know Jennifer and I use the same system. It works really well. The paper, to have that in front of you is huge. Timers, like I love this little graphic of putting an hourglass there, because sand through an hourglass definitely gives you a very tangible way to see time passing. Using your phone, using reminders, Post-its. I'll show you some office supply kind of stuff, Post-it stuff that I use on my calendar to help me. Analog clocks are great for us to see time passing rather than just having digital, because it doesn't really mean a whole lot to us. Cube timers, it's another tool I'll show you. And then strategies, actually planning, understanding the difference between tasks and projects. Tasks are like one-hit wonders. Projects take more planning and more of that executive function. Choose one night a week to do weekly planning. I love Sunday night because it gives me the whole week to look at, and I'll show you how I do that and make my time a little flexible. Prioritize using that brainstorming list. Again, writing down what's overwhelming you so that you can try to put it into some order. Making the time visible, making your tasks and projects tangible, being able to see your time. The one thing that we can get caught up with as ADHDers and will put us into overwhelm right back again is getting into perfection and overcomplicating things. So what I always love to say to my clients is done is better than perfect. Just get that chunk started and get it done. These are some fun pictures of tools and strategies to manage this. And again, getting these new things, they will re-sparkle, as we say, you know, they will build that interest in if we have a new planner. And if you have a planning system and it works for a few months and you love it, and then it's unsparkly to you, it's not interesting to you anymore, change it up, get another one that works. Use fun office supplies, that cube timer up here in the, it looks like a little dice with numbers on it. That's a great tool for, you know, just chunking time, Pomodoro method kind of stuff, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard. The visible timer, which is that one down in the corner there where you actually watch time pass when you use that. Those are all great tools to use. This is making time visible and flexible. This is actually my schedule for this week. And you can see on the left there that I did my calendar and I put my weekly commitments, the things that I have to do. And I know that I can't move them around. I know that I've made a commitment to be somewhere or to, you know, to be in a working session with somebody, and I can't move that. So I put that down, and then I take a yellow highlighter and I put, for each day, I note with that highlighter what time I have free. And then what I do is I have a to-do list and I make little tabs that you'll see here on the right to say, okay, these are the things that I have to do this week. I have a lot of client research to do. I've got several hours of that to do. I've got a vacation to plan. I want to walk my dog. I've got the deed paperwork for when we sold our house. I want to donate blood. You know, all these different things. Now, they don't have to be done at a certain time. And as ADHDers, a lot of times what we do is we say, all right, well, I'm going to do that on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And then Tuesday at 3 o'clock comes around and you don't do it. So you beat yourself up unmercifully, and then you don't get it done. This kind of system will allow you to say, oh, okay, I didn't get it done. I didn't get those emails done on Friday afternoon. I try to leave Saturday and Sunday fairly open. I could move that to Saturday or Sunday, or I could even move it over to Thursday if I knew that on Thursday that I had extra time. So just making this time visible and flexible will really help you to get stuff done and to get out of that overwhelm. So this is one of my favorite quotes on the planet. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Maya Angelou, everybody knows that one. So when you have this education, when you have this awareness, when you are understanding what it is to ignite your brain, to ignite your dopamine system, and then what tools you're going to use to, to bring that in and maintain it, then you'll be able to, to really make some headway. And from our beloved Ruth Bader Ginsburg, real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. So be gentle with yourself. Understand that it's a big deal to embark on this. Take one step at a time and then make that change.
Marybeth, I'm sorry to interrupt. Apparently there's somebody in the waiting room and you are the only person who has that power.
Okay, let me see how, and I don't know how to participants 26.
If you look, go to participants and click on that.
Okay, admit. Okay. And two more waiting, Cami. Okay. Did I get them all? I think I got them all.
You're the only one who can see who's in the waiting room because you're.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Yes, one more. Oh, okay. Cami Klein is joining. Cami's joining. Okay. I think we're good.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right. So I guess now we'll open it to questions. Thanks for your attention. Okay.
I have a question. The calendar, was that were those the yellow ones were the blockouts, but the other colors, were they stickies? Or
oh yes. They're did you see the little post-its that I had there? It's to the left of the clock. Can you still see my screen?
yes.
Okay. Do you see there, it looks like post-its to the left of the middle clock? They're like little transparent tabs.
Okay.
And then I just write my to-do stuff on it and stick it on my calendar. If I don't get to my client research on Tuesday, then I know I've got a big chunk of time on Thursday that I can do, or Friday I can do.
Oh, so the yellow ones you block out ahead of time that those are available for
right. See, yes. If you look on the left, what I do first, and Jennifer and I both do this. It's you write down the commitments. This stuff is set in stone, and then you see where your free time is. And then that's where you can say, okay, these are the things that I have to do, and I can move it into that time slot. This is a way to make your time visible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
What's your favorite dopamine hack?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're probably going to laugh at me because I did this today. I love to ride my bike outside and put music on and sing. I know that's really crazy, but I do it, and it fills me up. And then I am able to come back in and get motivated. Exercise, I realized during this pandemic, because I wasn't going to the gym, I wasn't riding my bike, I was so afraid to go outside, which at the very beginning, I saw that my motivation and energy really, really went down. So I think I love the bike and the music and all that kind of stuff, but I think the exercise thing is my biggest dopamine hack for me personally.
When we were in lockdown and my daughter, it was a total remote. She was getting very demotivated, and she's ADHD. So I would send her to a different room. I would make her switch classes. I would send it to attic for art class. I would send her, downstairs to her room, or, for
That's
her other stuff.
That's brilliant. That's changing your routine. That's like that person that climbed into bed with their latte just to change, just to
Yeah.
change up a routine. Anything crazy. I mean, the more out of the box, the better. It's fun. Yeah.
The exercise is so important, because I find that when I start to go into overwhelm, the exercise is the first thing that I stop doing. And that is just like a complete downward spiral first, downward slope from there. So first the exercise goes, then my eating is terrible, then I'm not sleeping well, and then I can't even think straight. Like it just happens so fast. So I think the awareness piece is so important that you were talking about. It's like, as soon as you feel yourself stopping, whatever your first thing is on your list in your spiral downward, whatever that first thing is, if we can be aware of that first thing happening and catch it at that point, I think it can save us from doing that slippery slope down, maybe, or at least make it a shorter time frame if we catch it faster, if we're aware of each of our own first, the tipping point.
Oh, I agree.
Right?
I agree. Yes. It's so funny that you say that. Even, and I didn't catch myself this time. I really did not catch myself until I was down. I hadn't exercised in a couple of months. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, this was just like 2 weeks ago. And I said, this is crazy. I have got to, and you sometimes you don't even recognize it, that you're like, something's off. Like, we were talking about the steps. And then as soon as I went and got back into my routine, I'd say within 48 hours, I felt better. It was like medicine. It's crazy. And all the John Ratey articles, Ratey, he is huge into those foundations. So it's just really, really great data. It gives you a lot of awareness, a lot of education.
And the exercise can be just getting out and walking. Like, it doesn't have to be something that is so vigorous or rigorous. It's just moving.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Joni, because he said even a walk of 10 minutes is like a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin. He said even a 5 or 10 minute walk outside.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people feel like, I just don't even know what to do with myself, just get outside, go for 10, like literally, like you said, a 10-minute walk, and then go from there after that. But
right.
Yeah.
Small step.
Did you say there was a website for body doubles?
There is, I think it's a website, and then there might be an app or something, but I know that there's a website, and it's called FocusMate. It's either focusmate.com or focusmate.org. And it's actually, people that just get on the computer, and you're not talking, it's a body double concept. They don't call it that, but that's what it is. And you sit there with somebody else, and you have a specific time and everything else. And it's very, very helpful to a lot of people. Even, the other thing that Ned Hallowell was talking about was the vitamin C, he calls it, or vitamin connection. And even just being with another person, not necessarily interacting, but just being there is a huge motivator. It will spur up that dopamine.
Okay.
It's .com, by the way.
.com? Okay, thanks.
Marybeth, I know that you spoke about the Pomodoro very briefly. I've used that with my children before, and it's been extremely effective. Perhaps you can talk a little bit more about it, because I imagine that some of the people here don't know what it is.
Okay, that's the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro, actually, if I have this right, means tomato in Italian. And I don't know why the heck they call it that. I can never figure that out, but it's kind of another one of those fun words that rolls off the tongue. But basically what it is conceptually is you set a goal to work for, I believe it's 25 minutes, and you can alter the timing. And then you will give yourself a break for 5 or 10 minutes and then go back again. So it's kind of because we tend, and I think that the reason for this technique working so well with people like us is because of the hyper focus, because we can tend to get into that hyper focus and work for 4 hours or whatever, but or sometimes we can't even get ourselves started. So it's kind of like a work for 25 minutes and then a break for 5 or 10. Is that, do I have that right, Andrea? Yeah.
Yes, and then after, say, 4 Pomodoros, you take more of a break, like a half-hour break. So it gives you something to look forward to.
Right.
So Marybeth, you mentioned mindful writing and by Maria Mendrano, and I'd like to hear more about that. That's not something I'm so familiar with.
Okay, that was when I was doing some research, and I'm trying to find that. There was, this was a Maria Mendrano. She's a psychologist. And basically what she said was mindful writing stimulates ongoing awareness. And that was applicable here, but there's also, when you think about that, like kids taking notes in school. I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she said, this is why I can't take notes on a computer. I must actually physically write, because that action does something to stimulate in the brain. So, and it creates more awareness. Now, I don't know if she was specifically talking about overwhelm, but the concept was applicable here. So that's why I threw that in there.
So do you know the process of it, aside from just
I don't, to be honest. I don't, but I know that there is, I was talking to my sister because I actually practiced my presentation with my sister, who is a master's degree in learning disability education from Syracuse. And she was explaining to me that yes, the actual physical movement of writing does trigger in the brain, receptors for learning.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm gonna look it up. It's very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the questions that you had talked about asking yourself, what story are you telling yourself? To try and be aware of what's going on. It's a really important question. And I know that Byron Katie talks about that a lot too. And I think the next question the next place to go from there is, once you realize you're telling yourself a story, is, is this story true? Because when you ask yourself that question, it, puts a whole different light on it, trying to think of, do I really know this to be true? And I just think it's a helpful question for us all to ask ourselves when we start to spin out a little bit.
What's the evidence that it is true?
Right.
Is there evidence?
And those are all those coaching questions, and why coaching can be so helpful, because those aren't questions that you're necessarily going to, just generate on your own, in your self-talk. It's really helpful to process that with a coach that's trained and can see, the different tendencies.
That's the question you have to put up on your fridge so you see it all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever you're thinking right now, is it true?
Yeah, really.
And is it a river or a rut story you're telling yourself? How
Yes.
productive is it? How is it serving you?
Yeah. Yeah, that river rut thing is huge, because that's, again, that goes to the like the mindset, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Are you willing to learn, or do you get stuck in, this thinking that isn't productive? Anybody else for comments or questions?
I'm just wondering, Ellen, did you talk at all about the CHAD conference coming up?
You're muted, Ellen.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Okay, here I am. I'm back. So the CHAD conference this year is going to be virtual. It's November 5th through the 7th. It's, if you've never been to a CHAD conference, I'm not sure what the virtual is going to be like, but people with ADHD say they feel like they've come home and they're with people who just get them. And I can only imagine how the virtual will mirror that kind of experience for folks. It's also way discounted this year, whereas in previous years you had to pay for a hotel as well as the conference. It's much less money this year. And the theme for this year is Strong Minds, Healthy Lives. There is a link, I believe, on our website where you can just go to chad.org/conference. Yeah, so also if you're not a member of CHAD, we would encourage you to become members. They have a lot of information. There's a bi-monthly magazine. And if you say that you are part of the Bergen County chapter of CHAD, you will be supporting us both financially as well as emotionally, spiritually. We really appreciate everybody who comes and who hopefully gets some benefit from all of our speakers. Our speakers are all voluntary and are just so generous in terms of giving their time and their information to us. Andrea, what else did I forget to say? Anything?
I think you said it all. I'm just wondering, what are the takeaways from tonight? Because I have so many, and I'm sure other people out there have their own takeaways. So I'm wondering if people can share.
Before you move away from the conference, how old do you have to be, or can I bring my teenager to this or no?
Yeah, why not? I think that would be fine. How old is your teenager?
15.
Yeah, so take a look. There's dozens of speakers and topics. And maybe your teen will find something of interest, something that resonates, or something that feels like it could be useful to him or her.
Okay, thank you.
And the conference is also geared towards beginners and people who have a lot of knowledge about ADHD.
Actually, with the conference, there's a lot of people who, families who come, and they are geared towards, there was a lot of presentations that were appropriate, where it listed if it's, for a younger audience, or also people who, like you said, are new to learning about it and not so technical, because then there's a lot of ones that are about scientific information and research, and that's kind of boring for a teenager. But there are interactive ones that are also more engaging and validating, because then it's not being talked about in as far as some of the topics that are very scientific can for teenagers. In my opinion, having attended it, would think I know I wouldn't want my teenager to be hearing them about themselves, or the possibilities at that age about issues that can arise. So yeah, you can plan ahead. It's actually very beneficial to look at the list beforehand and plan ahead, because talking about overwhelm tonight, overwhelm can definitely set in, because there are so many options, but all are very, very wonderful. And educational. And so you come back with feeling like your brain is increased in size by a huge percentage. So thank you. It was a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, so just to tag on to what you're saying, that just check the guidelines if you're going to bring your kid, and
Yes, no, that's very good advice. Because that was exactly my concern, making sure that I'm sure most of it will be useful, but wanted to make sure that, anything they didn't need to know yet. It's fine. Thank you.
And actually, it's funny you should say that, because last year that you were talking about your, having your daughter move from room to room, and there were actually multiple people I recall, both last year, and I had a man who was in his 60s that one day started talking about his ADHD, and the way he got through graduate school was by going into an empty building in his university and moving classrooms every 45 minutes, no matter what. And that is how he maintained his ability to focus. So the physically having to move himself with all his belongings actually engaged him both with, physical action by exercising, but kind of in so many ways, but also it's changing his environment. So yeah, that really helps.
Awesome. Thank you.
I can give a takeaway that I took, that I'm walking away with tonight. First of all, Jennifer and Marybeth, thank you so much. The information was amazing, and there was so much to take in, and all in a good way. There's so much to think about. So thank you so much. And just not even realizing like that I'm in overwhelm, like you were talking about. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm totally in overwhelm. And I have been for like the past 2 weeks, and now I get it. And just picking one thing, not having to figure out, not necessarily how to figure out how to get out of it, just go for a walk, just start out, just focus on that one thing, and everything else will start to ease up a little bit and become clearer. But not realizing that you're in overwhelm, but then being able to recognize the factors that are going on and helping you realize it in that way. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm.
You think about inertia, Joni. An object in motion stays in motion. So if you can just get energy or energized by that one thing,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Marybeth and Jennifer, I had a thought. I know that Ellen's a wonderful therapist, and you guys are wonderful ADHD coaches. Perhaps you could spend a minute or two talking about the differences between coaching and therapy, because I know that people need different things, and sometimes there's a fine line. So perhaps you could spend a minute talking about that.
Okay.
How do you want to?
Ellen, you want to go first?
Sure. I sometimes ask myself this question because working with people with ADHD, even if, the presenting problem is anxiety or depression, I end up incorporating what you might call coaching strategies or coaching techniques. But I'm also helping people working with their anxiety or depression or relationship issues in a way that might be deeper, might be different. I'm not even, it depends on the person. And I'm also a mindfulness meditation teacher, so I do incorporate teaching mindfulness into my work with people who are ADHD. It certainly speaks to the issue of self-awareness and helps people become aware of what they're experiencing in a given moment without judgment. Yeah, so it's such a good question, Andrea.
You said it beautifully, but I know that Marybeth and Jennifer have wonderful practices. So I was just wondering if you guys wanted to share just a little bit about what is coaching.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. By any chance, do you accept Medicare?
No, I don't.
Okay. And do you know if there are any therapists that, you know, in this area that you know, deal with these issues that do accept Medicare? Do you would recommend or anything?
You know what? Why don't you email me at adhd.bergencounty@gmail, and maybe we can talk about it. No one comes to mind immediately, but you know, let's talk.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
May I make an observation and offer the difference between coaching and therapy?
Please.
I'm a certified coach, trained in, I have recovery, addiction recovery, intervention, ADHD, many different things. For us, the understanding of coach versus therapy is that a therapist can be a coach. However, a coach is not a therapist. Therapy, for a 30,000-foot view, is working past to present and working on the dysfunction side to functional, whereas a coach works in the present to future and works on functional to optimal. So that we work very well with therapists in finding out a lot of what goes on. And like Ms. Stewart said, you know, it depends on the time. Are you doing mindful stuff? Are you finding out what's behind what's going on and things moving forward? And as far as some type of covered payment, depending on if you have DDD benefits, you can be an approved provider, but their scale is, you know, questionable. But that's something to look into as DDD moves into a fee-based environment.
You said that beautifully. Thank you.
What is DDD?
So for where I'm at, I have an adult daughter. DDD is under the state, and when you get Medicaid, you can get DDD, which is the Department of, you know, it's another list of something. So it's disability of something or other. And your Medicaid comes under New Jersey Family Care.
Okay, but that's only for Medicaid. That's not for Medicare.
Right. Maybe Medicare too. I'm not sure. So that's where, you know, I know that I'm an approved provider. When I go to a support network provider, I can bill through that to a participant's benefit package.
Oh,
So,
but you can bill to Medicare?
no,
Oh, okay.
because I'm certified where the therapist is licensed. So there's a difference. We play different roles. We're different parts of the puzzle.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, well
Thank you.
put, well put. I don't know that I could add much to that about the difference between coaching and therapy, Jim. I think you put it really well. We tend to just, you know, focus on the present and moving people into their optimal future, into where they want to be. And therapy does take much deeper dives into the reasoning for things. And, you know, they have all kinds of, you know, training and education and licenses and doctorates and stuff like that that we don't have.
Yeah, I also find when working with a therapist and they find that nugget, that they come to us and help us to, you know, give us the idea to steer the client to that fulfillment. Whereas, you know, we you know, where we're digging sometimes, or we find the nugget and we give it to them, you know, but it's more, you know, we're the people that get to dress up and put the jazzy stuff on. Everybody else, you know, especially in like where I work in an addiction recovery, when somebody's been through the train wreck and then they come to me, it's like, oh, great, we get this shiny new vessel to fill and move forward. you know, and they've been through whatever else that people are supporting them in their network. So working with therapists is important, and just like in addiction, the family side of it is so important. So listening to you guys talk about your own overwhelm as well as family overwhelm, you know, it is so true. So it's, you know, so true to be aware.
I always think that probably the best scenario is a therapist, a coach, and then of course a medical doctor if there's medication involved. I always call it the triad approach, and I think that works. It's probably one of the best, you know, outcomes you can get with all three.
Marie, if you're talking, you're on mute. We can't hear you. Push the little microphone.
Here we go. Sorry. Technical difficulties. My question is, I was interested when you were talking about the overwhelm and you were saying write down your feelings about it. Can you be a little more specific with that?
You're on mute.
What are we writing down? What we think is overwhelming us?
I think, you know, I would, and again, I in a coaching realm, I would say, you know, well, what do you want to write down? And but I would give you the kind of the example of what I just went through, because like Joni was saying when she was listening to me saying, oh my God, I'm in overwhelm. That's 2 weeks ago. I was, you know, trying to put this presentation together. I was like, oh my God, I'm in overwhelm. And what I did was I actually wrote down on a piece of paper what is overwhelming me. And I just started to throw up on it. And it was like, you know, you're selling the house. You've got this presentation, you know, you've got these many clients this week. You've got this research to do, you know, oh my God, the dog has to go to the vet. You know, I just started to write it down. No categories, no nothing. I just wrote it down. And then just that simple act starts to like ignite that executive function a little bit to start organizing and to start to try to tackle it.
So basically you're just you're unloading your minds on what you have to do, like all those tabs open, you're writing down all the tabs.
Yes,
okay. You're not judging it and saying, oh my God, this is impossible. You're not judging it. You're just getting it out of your mind onto paper of what you have to do, all the open tabs. Okay.
Yes.
Called a brain dump.
That makes sense.
That's right. I'm sorry, Jennifer, I couldn't hear you.
It's called
a
brain
that term.
dump. You know, when you just dump all those thoughts out of your brain and put it on paper so that, you know, you're not trying to hold that mission to hold on to all this information when your working memory is already unstable, you know, is stressful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I get into overwhelm a lot more than I would like. So I really appreciate all the wonderful strategies you've both talked about. It's really been really helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, well, if unless anybody else has any other questions or comments, we're scheduled to end at 9:15. I want to, Jennifer and Marybeth, thank you so much. There was so much and so generous of all your offerings and so much information. To let people know, we are going to take the recording and post it on our CHAD website so that if you want to review the slides or hear what Jennifer and Marybeth said, you can have easy access to that. And I also want to thank Joni and Andrea and Brocha for all their support in helping to get this program going. We are having, the next offering will be on October 19th. We're having a support group virtually that Isabel Ibrahimi runs. You can see the information on the website. And our next speaker, as I said at the beginning, will be November 2nd. That's going to be Dr. Matthew Zook. And he's talking about positive parent-child relationships and building resilience and self-worth in children with ADHD. So I thank everyone who came, and I hope to see you guys again. And again, Jennifer and Marybeth, really tremendous. You clearly put in so much time and energy, and you gave us so much information. It was just amazing. So thank you both.
Glad to be here.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, ladies, you were really informative. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye. Bye.